The Big 12 decided not to do media rankings this year at their media day. Good thing you got your boy here because I got the answers for you. Then I was trying to figure out why. Maybe it has something to do with how disastrous they were last year because they had Arizona State picked 16th and finished first. And Utah, Oklahoma State, and Arizona got 37 first place votes, and they only went 4-23 in conference play. So maybe they're looking at it and saying these media picks are actually influencing the AP voters and influencing the college football playoff and how they think about it. But guess what? Your boy is still doing it anyway. Because they should have just came to us if they wanted accurate preseason rankings, because you got to leave it to Unafraid Show to save the day. And here are my official 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 2025 Big 12 preseason rankings. These Big 12 rankings are how they will finish the season, not just the expectations coming into it. We factored in schedule, we factored in personnel, injuries, suspensions, everything that you can imagine to get to these rankings. Number 16, the Arizona Wildcats. I hate that I have to put Arizona last, but the way that the Brent Brennan hire went down with their then athletic director, Dave Hickey, getting fired for financial mismanagement just 1 week after flying to the Bay to get Brent Brennan to sign on as the Wildcats coach, that just isn't a recipe for stability. Arizona didn't do a great job of shoring up trench talent in the transfer portal, but they did land an absolute stud in Chattanooga wide receiver Jalen Watley. Arizona also has an experienced offensive line, but Oklahoma State taught us last year that experience doesn't mean good. I also like the defensive backs led by safety Genesis Smith, but a good secondary only comes into play if you can stop the run. And I don't think the Wildcats will do much of that this year, which is going to cause a lot of L's. Number 15, UCF Knights. Scott Frost is back in the building at the place that he wanted to be. Remember, he didn't want to go to Nebraska. Okay. But I think that UCF fans should be excited about that. But Scott Frost was also doing analyst work in the NFL last year, and his transfer portal class really reflects a situation where he's a little behind the 8 ball for this season. And we're probably looking at a 2-year full roster reset in Orlando. And the most important thing for the Knights to do this year is to determine which of their, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 quarterbacks on the roster are going to give them the best chance to build a unit around them for 2026. Indiana transfer Taven Jackson has some upside, but if I'm a UCF fan, I'm rooting for Florida boy and Virginia Tech transfer Davy Belfort to show me enough to have him on the 2 deep, because he still got 4 years left to play, and in the transfer portal era, you can do a whole lot of building in 2 to 3 years. So for UCF, this isn't all doom and gloom. You at least have some hope, right? That takes us to number 14, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. This one hurt because I want to believe that the Cowboys going 0-9 last year in conference play is an extreme outlier for Mike Gundy's extraordinarily successful tenure in Stillwater. But I'm just not sure that he's equipped for the college football era that it has now entered into with the transfer portal and NIL, because a lot of things started to look shaky post Jim Knowles, and the Cowboys now turn to Todd Grantham as their 3rd defensive coordinator in 4 years. That ain't good, people, because Grantham was once the highest paid assistant in college football before some things went south at the University of Florida. So maybe he still has that fastball in him on the defensive side, but does Oklahoma State have the personnel to slow down a conference full of talented young quarterbacks, especially since they allowed the conference worst 36 points per game last year? They do not have the roster to slow that down very much, but I do like Akron middle linebacker transfer Brian McCoy. He's a sleeper to lead the conference in tackles. See, we end on a bright spot. Next up, the Houston Cougars. Now, the Cougars might be the biggest variable in the Big 12 this year because they had a top 40 scoring defense in 2024 despite having next to no offense. And I'm literally not exaggerating when I say next to no offense, because this is a team that scored a combined 18 offensive touchdowns last year. 18! And there were 4 quarterbacks that rushed for at least 18 touchdowns last season. You played 12 games. They only scored 18 offensive touchdowns. Now, their head coach, Willie Fritz, is a good coach. And after last season's offensive debacle, he decided to reunite with his former Tulane OC Slade Nagel. That's the same OC that helped Fritz earn the Houston gig in the first place. You can only go up from 14 points per game. There is nowhere to go but up from 14 points a game last year. And we'll see if former Texas A&M quarterback Connor Weigman and the 5 offensive line and 3 pass-catching transfers that Fritz brought in, if they can help the Cougars reverse the course and possibly get to a bowl game and put up some points. And if we're being honest, they have a 5-star quarterback in Kason Henderson who did really well at the Elite 11 committed right now. So they got to prove to him that they can score some points and that he made the right decision pledging to the hometown Cougars. Number 12, the Cincinnati Bearcats. I actually like this Cincinnati Bearcats team because it's a tough thing when you look at a team's roster and then you're like, I wonder if they would do a better job in somebody else's hands. But after Cincinnati went to the college football playoff and earned a spot in this conference, I didn't expect them to become a perennial powerhouse, but I damn sure didn't expect what we've had since then. And it also can't be acceptable that a team that had 53 wins over the 5 years from 2018 to 2022 only managed 8 wins over the last 2 seasons. Now, I'm rooting for Scott Satterfield to turn it around over there at Cincinnati. And this roster is really his best chance to do that. You got Brendan Sorsby, who has an NFL body and arm, and the wide receivers are solid. You got Tyree Walker and Evan Pryor. They're both capable of being top 20 Big 12 running backs. And then the defense might not be deep, but it is experienced. Now, how this team shows up against a vulnerable Nebraska squad in the beginning of the year, right out the gate, will tell us a lot about how this year is going to go for Cincinnati. Now we got to head all the way to the east coast of the Big 12 for the West Virginia Mountaineers. They got a new coach. Rich Rod is back, baby. And the Mountaineers faithful, they are fired up. They are excited, and they should be, because their former coach, he did a great job at Jacksonville State the last few seasons. Just in the last 2 years, Rich Rod's teams had over 6,500 yards rushing. I am not making that number up. You might be saying to yourself, George, that was Conference USA. He's not going to come into the Big 12 and try to run all over this conference. Okay, then explain why he took 4 running backs in the portal of all different sizes and skill sets. And historically, even when he was at Arizona, he's going to run the damn football. This team is fixing to run, and run some more. And I think that will keep them in a lot of games. This team is going to run, and run some more. And I believe that this will keep them in a lot of games. They probably shouldn't be above Houston or Cincinnati in Rich Rod's first year back in Morgantown. But if those teams can't score points and this one can, you'll see the Mountaineers above them in the standings as well. Number 10, the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, after the way Kansas ended last season, you might see me put the Jayhawks at 10 and think I'm a Jalen Daniels hater. No, the opposite. I know the kid. I like him. And with all that Kansas lost in the offseason, I'm a Jalen Daniels believer. That's why they're at 10, because the Jayhawks have a relatively proven offensive line unit. And while Daniels moving around doesn't always make their job easy, they do it well. And they have a decent transfer class of pass catchers in Cam Pickett, Bryson Canty, Levi Witz, and former Alabama wide receiver Emmanuel Henderson. But my worry about this team is on the defensive end, because they have a pass defense that struggled despite immense talent last season. And now that talent is gone. They used the transfer portal to fully rebuild their linebacker core. And then behind the first unit of this defense is about as inexperienced and thin of a unit as you will get in the Big 12. So a lot of this season's success hinges on health and durability. But the good thing, though, is that even if this defense gives up points, that just means that the ball will be right back in Jalen Daniels' hands. And when he's consistent, he's one of the most exciting players in the country. Number 9, the BYU Cougars. I know BYU fans are mad that they weren't in my top 25 to start the season, and I get it. I'd be a little bit upset too after, having a good season last year. But with everything up in the air with their quarterback, Jake Ratcliffe, whether he's going in the transfer portal, is he not? But he's for sure at least suspended for the 7 games of the season for the honor code violation for getting his rocks off a little bit. Now, even with Ratcliffe though, I have been seeing evolving attitudes about him from the Cougar faithful over the course of the offseason, because it feels like the narrative is that he went from one of the main reasons that they almost played for the Big 12 championship to the reason that they didn't get there. Now, the truth, honestly, is somewhere in the middle. This is an offense that is really built upon the run that sets up the pass. And LJ Martin is on the brink of being a star running back behind an offensive line that averages about 6'4", 315. The good news for BYU is that they have a fairly soft early schedule. And if they can beat Colorado and Boulder, then they should enter the Holy War at 6-0. But a 4-game run of Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and TCU is where we'll really learn the truth about this team. 9th might feel a little bit low, but you have to remember that the team that finished 8th and 9th last year in the Big 12 still finished 5-4 in the conference. Now, I think that this could be an 8-win team even without Jake Ratcliffe. Number 8, the Utah Utes. The Utes move on from the injury field but exciting career of Cam Rising, and they turn the keys over to the second coming of Khalil Tate in Devon Dampier. Now, one thing that the Utes have been missing at the quarterback position for a long time is that type of athleticism under center that keeps defenses from keying in on the run game. And Dampier had almost 800 yards rushing by himself in his last 6 games last year, and he can throw the ball too. I got a chance to see the kid in practice. He is nicely progressing in this offense. Now, I also believe that Utah is a team that is in contention for having one of the conference's best offensive lines. They might have 2 first-round picks on that offensive line. So why do I have them at 8 and not higher? That's the question, right? I'm just not convinced that the Utes deciding to go with the running backs and wide receivers that have been developed elsewhere while sticking with the plan of largely homegrown defense is going to result in a coherent and consistent product on the field. Now, this is also a team that has been plagued by depth issues recently, and it could be their undoing as well. Like last year where they were down to their 5th string quarterback. It's hard to win like that. But having Jackson Beck running the offense that he ran with Dampier at New Mexico is probably going to work out best for everybody involved. And I could easily see this team outperforming my expectations, and their fans would like me even more, being that I went out to go interview their head coach, Mr. Kyle Whittingham. Great interview on Unafraid Show, so make sure you take a look at that as well. Now, we should know exactly who this Utah Utes team is by the time they travel to play Arizona State on October 11th. Number 7, the TCU Horned Frogs. Now, gotta be honest, this pick worries me a little bit because TCU won 9 games last year, but they also look completely lost at times. Now, the 2024 Horned Frogs lost to a bad UCF team. They lost to a Houston team that averaged 14 points a game, and they lost by 11 points and barely escaped their game against Stanford with a win. So that's cause to make me nervous. But why am I so high on them this year? Because their quarterback, Josh Hoover, is an assassin with a supremely talented blocking offensive line. Now, the Horned Frogs might put together a top 10 offense in the country, much less the Big 12. They are going to score some points. But the question is, do we trust this defense though? Because they have had some decent pass rushers and some run stuffers. But outside of Bud Clark at safety, I'm not sure I trust these DBs to make enough plays to keep TCU from having to try and win every game in a shootout. They also have one of the tougher schedules in the entire Big 12. Now, if TCU had BYU's schedule, I might be guaranteeing 10 or 11 wins, but they don't. Number 6, the Colorado Buffaloes. Now, I know that this comes at a shock to people because they're like, they lost Travis Hunter, they lost Shador. Now, that might not be a bad thing because the offense was catered too much to Shador's strengths, which caused the run game to suffer and Colorado to consistently be in third and long situations because they couldn't run the football. Now, they got a new quarterback who should be their starter, which is Caden Salter, who came over from Liberty, and he had more rushing yards by himself the last 2 years at Liberty than Colorado did as a team. And then he also proved that when he has a clean pocket, then he can sling the rock as well as any group of five quarterback. Now that he's in the Power Five, he can go show that he really got something special. And I actually believe that this offense for Colorado will look a lot more coherent this year. And now, it might not be as exciting without Travis Hunter, but exciting doesn't always win you football games. And that's why in the bold predictions, what do I say about Colorado? That their offense will be better and ranked higher than it was last year, this year, because they will be able to run the football. Now, where Colorado does need to maintain progress is on defense, because the 4 presumptive starters that they brought in via the portal, they were all targeted to help elevate the Buffs' ability to handle the run, because that's where they have struggled. They got 6'5", 325-pound defensive tackle Jaheim Otis. Their linebackers, Reginald Hughes, Martavius French, and safety Taufik Bayard should help Colorado stay in the top 5 in the conference in yards per carry allowed. So that's why they're at number 6. Number 5, the Baylor Bears. Dave Aranda, their head coach, he handled the hottest of the hot seats last season very well. And his offense went from 101st in scoring in 2023 to top 20 last year. Now, Dave Aranda, he gets a lot of credit for bringing in Jake Spavital, who worked wonders with quarterback Sawyer Robinson to craft an offense that fits him and spreads the ball all over the field. But last year's Baylor's team still lost 5 games. And while that outpaced expectations, it also revealed that the defense is the problem. And that is the thing that had been Dave Aranda's calling card and area of expertise his entire career. So the heat, even after last season, is still on. It's like the heat is on. It's on Aranda. It's still up right now. But last year's success, it is also going to come with expectations this year of better. So the question is, do the Bears have a defense that can help them challenge for Big 12 supremacy and a spot in the college football playoff? Adding tackling machine Travion Barnes from Florida International, that can't hurt. Pairing Barnes with Keaton Thomas means a lot fewer missed tackles for this Bears linebackers group. But Baylor is also putting a lot of stock in Ohio State and Oregon transfers, Calvin Simpson-Hunt and Amarion Winston, to live up to the potential that they had coming out of high school. This year, Baylor's first 6 games include Auburn, SMU, Kansas State, Arizona State, and as long as they go 2-2 over those 4, then they can still have a legitimate shot at being a top 25 team in 2025. And anything above that, you actually might have to consider this Bears team a threat to win the conference. So they got a shot. Next team up, Iowa State, a team who played for the conference championship last year. And I've heard all offseason long is that the Cyclones are going to come back down to earth after losing Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, who both had 1,100 plus yards receiving in 2024. But has anybody considered, besides me, has anybody considered that maybe they had that success because Rocco Beck is a hell of a quarterback? I guess nobody thought about that, because you got Xavier Townsend and Chase Sowell, who came from UCF and East Carolina, because they wouldn't have transferred in if they didn't think that Beck was running Taylor Moser's offense, that he couldn't get similar results with them. Plus, you have to think about the fact that people don't realize that Iowa State was rolling out one of the most beat up and injury depleted defenses in all of America last year and still finished with the most wins in team history. So why do you think there will be a regression? Because even if the offense does drop off just a little bit, I do not think it will be an offensive line that is returning over 100 collective starts that will be the problem. And they have a running back duo that ran for 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. So how much better will the defense be with the return of injured linebackers Caleb Bacon and William McLaughlin. They're going to be better. The only thing that's keeping Iowa State from being a team that I see winning the Big 12 is a conference schedule that includes both teams that I have ahead of them, as well as having to face TCU and Colorado. Number 3, Texas Tech. Oh, ain't it good when money can buy. Now, their head coach, Joey McGuire, is the first Texas Tech coach to have 3 straight winning records in conference play since Spike Dykes was at the helm in the 1990s. And he's the first coach to guide the Red Raiders to at least 6 conference wins since Mike Leach did it way back in 2008 when he went 7-1. They're on the right track now. And couple that with the fact that they are swimming in more money than the Live Golf Tour right now, thanks to Mr. Cody Campbell and that good oil money. And you have every reason to believe that they can challenge for conference supremacy in 2025. Now, Texas Tech has the number 1 ranked portal class, and not just this offseason, but ever. And what did they spend that money on? How about a starting right tackle, a starting left tackle, a running back to replace Taj Brooks, and 5 of the best defensive linemen available? That ain't too shabby, right? The Red Raiders season is really going to come down to one person. It is their quarterback, Baron Morton. Dude is going into his 4th season as the Texas Tech quarterback, and his first was with a world of expectations. Morton also gets a gift with one of the hottest names in the coordinator market in Mac Leftwich, who helped Texas State's offense to a top 10 scoring ranking last year. And that quarterback, Jordan McLeod, he had a career high 8.2 yards per attempt. If there's one thing that Morton doesn't always do, it's push the ball downfield. So this on offense, between the offensive coordinator and him, could put the Red Raiders in a position to make the college football playoff. I think we've seen this movie before. Oh, maybe in softball where they pulled in all the transfers and then make their first college softball World Series. Don't be surprised. Number 2, the Arizona State Sun Devils. Now, here is a team that historically has never been able to handle lofty expectations. Never. But what am I supposed to do with the fact that they just won the conference last year? They got one of the best wide receivers in the country in Jordan Tyson. He's coming back from injury. And they are returning more production than most teams in America, despite losing a Heisman Trophy candidate at running back in Cam Scatterbull. Because at this point, you have to expect the coaching trio of Kenny Dillingham at head coach, offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo, and defensive coordinator Brian Ward to do big things. The Sun Devils went out and got Kanye Udo from Army in the transfer portal. And they're hoping that Kyson Brown, Raleek Brown, and Udo can replace Scatterbull's production in the aggregate, even though we know how special Scatterbull was. But the rest of the team isn't built on hope. They're actually better at wide receiver, tight end, and offensive line than they were last year. And that all bodes well for the Sam Leavitt Heisman hype train that somehow started up this offseason after he was scolded for comparing himself favorably to Quinn Ewers before the Peach Bowl. And you know what? He said he was going to be the best quarterback in the bowl game. And guess what? He was the best quarterback in the bowl game. I like that sort of thing. Talk that ish and then back it up. But how about Arizona State's defense? They are stacked at interior and linebacker and in the secondary as well. So there's actually a lot of pressure on this defense and their defensive line to be good at least and do their part to create pressure. Because the difference between a top 5 conference finish and a potential repeat trip to the college football playoff, it is going to come down to Prince Dorba and Clayton Smith getting pressure off the edge. Because them 2 guys were both blue chip recruits coming out of high school, and now it's time to live up to it. Number 1, the Kansas State Wildcats. Now, I'm going to live and die this year with the talented group of returning juniors on this Kansas State offense. Avery Johnson is one of the most exciting quarterbacks in all of college football, and he gets wide receiver Jace Brown, running back Dylan Edwards, and tight end Garrett Oakley as well back. And that's a special group because there's going to be a lot of pressure on their new offensive coordinator, Matt Wells, to deliver. and deliver with that type of talent that he has in the building is going to be a requirement, because Matt Wells in his career, honestly, he's been hit and miss. He's had some of college football's best offenses, and he's had some duds. And a lot of it has come down to personnel, which is what gives me confidence that this year could be one of the special years in his offense. Now let's talk about their head coach, Mr. Chris Klieman, because he's been a good, solid head coach. He's been a developer since he's been in Manhattan. But with the exodus of Oklahoma and Texas from the Big 12, this was supposed to be the Wildcats' moment in the sun, but 14 out of their 17 losses in the 4 years have come in conference play. To make 2025 the year that they win the conference by losing one game or less, this defense is going to need to be special. And when I look at the linebacker group led by Austin Romaine, I think that they might have what it takes. But one wild card, though, for this defense is South Alabama transfer Omarion Forteby, because he went out as a true freshman against LSU last year and looked like a future stud. Because Kansas State needs that future to not be later. It needs it to be right now. A big part of my why here is a very friendly schedule for Kansas State, because they don't play anybody in 2025 that I see as a potentially dominant running game. They got no Arizona State, no BYU, and if they beat Iowa State in Ireland to start the season, they might be the favorite in any game that they play outside of maybe Baylor on the road for the rest of the season. That's why I got Kansas State. And those are my Big 12 rankings, how they will finish, not how they will start the season. Make sure that you guys like, subscribe, get notifications, tell a friend about the Unafraid Show, and be one of us.